happy, Fats Domino. You brought many, many happy times to many people, I'm sure. Now, straight back to Cape Town on the lines to join Klaas Coetzee. He's the head winemaker at Stella Winery. Klaas, good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
No, fine, thank you very much.
Good. Are you sitting in the cellar tapping your feet to Fats Domino?
Well, at the moment, not. I'm at my children's athletics.
Oh my goodness! Thank you for making time for me, Klaas.
Yes, no problem.
I won't keep you too long if that's the case. So I just wanted to catch up with you because I saw that not only are you producing organic wines, which you've always done, but now vegan wines. Talk to me about a vegan wine.
Well, in the past, or because the wine industry is so old, they've always used whatever they could, like even things like ox blood and proteins and gelatines from animal origins. But since people has become more knowledgeable about what you can do, they started to produce finding agents, what we call from plants.
Yes.
So that's the one way we can get away without any animal products. But the easiest way is actually just to prepare your vineyards in the proper way.
Which means what? What do you do when you're preparing an organic or a vegan vineyard?
Well, it's actually any vineyard, but if you have the right sites, the right terroir, and you do all your pruning correctly, and you do all your shoot removal and the leaf plucking and the management of your crop, and everything is in balance, you actually don't need a lot of fining agents to polish your wines at the end.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yes. The other thing is with the whites, you only use the free run juice. So then there's not a lot of phenolics extracted from the skins. So then you don't need any fining agents.
And they do also sometimes fine wine with bentonite and things like that. Is that completely not allowed in an organic winery?
It is allowed. Bentonite is actually a clay that's very fine.
Yeah.
It's a positive ion, and it basically binds all the proteins in the wine, and then it goes to the bottom of the tank.
Yes.
So it's actually 100% natural. It's a clay mineral.
So you could actually use that if you needed to fine your wines. But you're saying We do need to do that. There's two things you cannot get away with, especially in white wines. Is you need to make the wine cold stable, and you need to make it protein stable. Cold stable is for when it goes into your fridge. Yes.
If it's not totally cold stable, you will see small crystals forming at the bottom of the bottle. It looks almost like salt or sugar.
Yes.
And protein is what we call warm stability.
Yes.
If the wine gets warm and it's not protein stable, it gets hazy.
Yes. Or cloudy, yeah.
Or cloudy, yes. So you do need those two. You cannot get away with if you want to make a wine that's suitable for consumers.
Okay. So now what makes a wine organic, Klaas? Really? I mean, let me let you talk.
Yes. The first thing is you need to be certified organic, and that takes at least 3 years. That means you need to do away with all the chemicals that normal conventional farmers use. So for fertilizer, you're allowed to use pelletized compost or chicken manure.
Yeah.
On the spraying side, there's only basically two elements that you're allowed to use is copper and sulfur. The copper we can use for downy mildew, and the sulfur for powdery mildew. But that's also very limited. They put a limit on it, the amount of kilograms you're allowed to use per hectare.
And do they come and test? Do they come and check and see what you're doing?
What they do is you need to have a register where you show all the inputs that you've bought, and then you subtract all the spraying, and then you have a balance.
Yes.
And then they come and check if the balance is still
within the organic, yeah.
Yes, and they also come physically and come and see. We have a storeroom that has to be locked for all those spraying materials, and then they come and see if you say there must be 3 kilograms left. They come and check if there's 3 kilograms left.
Oh wow! So, and are they quite vigilant? Do they test you quite regularly?
Yes, they do. They will do at least one official visit every year. And for us, it takes about 3 weeks because we do our organic and our fair trade certification simultaneously. So that takes about 3 weeks for that inspector, and then they will also do a surprise visit during the year. And what they've also now introduced is another visit in harvest time. But that's also, they will just let you know and they will come.
Okay. And apart from being organic and organically grown and vinified as well, it's much better for the soil, isn't it? It's sort of putting a whole lot of stuff back into the soil, which wine farming can actually be quite bad at normally.
For sure. I mean, I've seen now a lot on Facebook people say that children doesn't need antibiotics, they need microbes.
Yeah.
They need to play in the soil. And I think the same principle applies for vineyard and for soil. You basically kill all the natural fauna and flora that you have in the soil with all these chemicals. If you can get a natural balance, you actually have very healthy plants.
And also, you can't, unlike most farming, because it's not crop rotational, so you can't leave the soil to lie fallow. So you have to try and build that soil up. Do you plant cover crops in between your vineyards?
We do. That's actually the only way you can do a crop rotation, by using different cover crops every year.
And what do you put? What do you use for your cover crops?
We would use different kinds of legumes, especially because that helps a lot with putting.
It's nitrogenous, yeah.
So that's one of the things. Other things will be like wild mustard. That also helps to prevent barley, hops. Some of those perennials, they help to reduce, for instance, nematodes in your soil. So depending on what your need is, you will then sow the cover crop that you need.
Yes, yeah. So you obviously test your vines and see all your soils and see where they're deficient, and then you plant a cover crop accordingly.
For sure.
Yeah.
But nitrogen is one of the main things you want to buy.
Yeah.
As I said, if you have some nematode problems, you would rather go for wild mustard or some barley.
Nitrogen's brilliant. I always use I love growing roses, and I sort of treat them as vines because I live in Johannesburg, so I sort of prune them when you prune, and I always have beautiful roses, and I use Epsom salts. It's an amazing nitrogen sort of infuser, and you must see the growth on my roses. They're magnificent.
Yes.
So Epsom salts is a goodie. What do you do about the next door neighbour spraying stuff that's seriously not organic or serious? Does it not sort of blow over into your farm and mess with your
You can get drift, but that's one of the things the inspectors does. They come and test on that corridors. So they sort of determine if it's wide enough or not. If they find that there's too many drifts happening, they would sometimes ask you not to harvest the first 2 or 3 or 5 rows, depending on how they test.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that will go into a conventional wine blend, and the rest will be organic. The people that test our grapes and leaves is Shronkinis, and like the lady says there is that, I mean, if she tests deep enough, and she will find something anywhere in the world, because we are so polluted.
Yeah.
That's the main problem.
Yeah. And then, I mean, you have forever and ever, since 2000, I think you started your winery, you've done all of this, and you produce a no added sulfur wine. Everybody's on their high horse about sulfur. Sulfur in its natural form is a very necessary part of any farming, not least of which wine farming. So there's no added sulfur. How do you clean your wines up, and how do you preserve them, and how do you stop them from oxidizing and all of that if you use no sulfur?
Okay, we can begin from the beginning. Is firstly, we don't add any sulfur. I mean, that's logical. Then the other advantage we have a lot of wine. We're a big winery in terms of organic growing. So you need to, and that's where skill comes in. You need to select the wines that's suitable for no sulfur added.
Yeah.
And over time, you sort of get a feeling for what works and what doesn't work.
Yes.
It needs to have a certain structure. It needs to have a certain quality.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. Then you need to keep oxygen away. And most of the time, winemakers don't involve themselves too much in the bottling side. And that's actually where a lot of wines get damaged.
Yes.
where quality gets degraded. So for us, we have a special bottling method that we do, and we sort of try to make the dissolved oxygen in the wine as low as possible.
Okay, good. I wondered how you stopped it from oxidizing and all of that, but I mean, there's obviously a much more complicated
it's much more complicated.
We're making it very simple, but the bottom line is you don't add any sulfur to your wines.
That's the main thing. The other interesting thing is that they allow you can only call it a no sulfur added wine if it has less than 10 parts per million of total sulfur. You can get yeast that produce, because one of the byproducts is sulfur.
Yeah.
And some of the yeast can easily produce up to 90 parts per million of total sulfite. So your fermentation process you need to manage as well to make sure that the yeast also doesn't produce sulfite.
Well done. I mean, you've just done it for such a long time. Stellar Winery, consistently awarded accolades. You're producing wines of excellent quality. Sorry to have interrupted your athletics evening, and I hope that they win all the prizes just like their daddy is. Well done, Klaas, and thanks for joining me on Classic Wine.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the wine.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.
Well, that's Klaas Coetzee, head winemaker at Stellar Winery, for those of you who are organically inclined.